I've just given them.
Yeah.
We can share.
Yeah, and I'll have one.
Just don't make me, I share my pilot, just don't make me too much.
Right, we're on. We're on.
All right, so Anne, over to you.
Okay. I thought we'd take the opportunity just to look through where we've got to following the last lot of feedback that we had from both the community and the board. So in front of you, you've got the latest draft plans with all the feedback incorporated in them. We are in the process of doing the document. This is the first draft, but Paula and I are still working through it. We're not happy with it yet, so we've got a little bit more to do in here, but this is it's shaping up pretty good. We're just more about the layout and things like that. So we're pretty close. The intention is that we'll get a bit of feedback from the board, but a little bit more feedback to come from Okaho, who've provided us with some cultural context specific to the valley. And so once we want to get it back to them before it goes to council in October. And just in terms of how it sits in the actual document itself and make sure that they're happy with that. So what I thought I might do is kind of work through the plans, if that's okay, and then we can ask any questions along the way or anything that kind of jumps out at you. So if we start with it's probably not that many changes, but I can give you a little bit of update on things like the alluvial fan hazards, the Tiger Regional Council on that, and a few other things like that. So we start with Roxburgh. Not a lot has changed. Probably the biggest change would be across the river, where we got feedback both from the community and from the board around putting a little bit more of the large lot residential over there. So it is a little bit tricky because it looks like an odd shape, but we've tried to do what we can to follow property boundaries. It does get a bit trickier beyond that. So across there we've got, you'll see the pond area, for example, in Roxburgh East there, just north of the ponds. There's a blue pond area there, which that might be your property, Mark.
Yeah, that's the lake. That's the lake, actually.
Lake, sorry.
Well,
Yeah.
my wife calls it
Yeah. So that's just around the topography. There's an area when you if you're travelling that way and out on that Roxburgh East Road, you kind of then come up to the top of the hill. So what we've tried to do is stay below that kind of top point where you go up and then you descend down into the rest of the area there. In terms of there's an area that is currently rural residential, but it's highly productive, and it's the area just above the cemetery. Does it come through with the numbers on this?
Right.
Annoying. Yeah, apologies, that's a bit annoying. So there's an area. So where the cemetery is there, you can see that kind of grey, whited out patched area there. So that's quite productive land through there generally. And we had a lot of feedback through the workshops in particular that it was important to try and maintain that where possible. So it's basically that, again, it's that top of the hill and back down that way.
So what colour is on the legend?
Yeah.
What colour is it on the legend?
Which one?
The grey.
The grey above the
the grey,
cemetery.
it's
So below Woodhouse Road.
yeah, it's rural.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why it's not showing.
It's rural.
It'll become rural. It's currently land use. It's currently rural residential.
Oh, and you're reverting to rural.
Yeah, and that came through the workshops. And we haven't had. There's a lot of orchards through there, and it's quite productive through there. And that came through from Port New Zealand and some of the orchardists about maintaining what was important about the valley and in terms of productive capacity. So, yeah. So the area, the light the light beige colour is the large lot residential. On here, this is one of the things that we've still got to do some finalising. It says large lot 2,000 square metres, so that's the lighter cut beige colour. Where plan change 19 has landed is on 1,500 for that, so we will be consistent with where it is landed. So at the moment, that's sitting on 1,500 square metres.
Large lot.
Large lot, yeah.
So the large lot is,
Yeah. So that is the light beige across, the one with the lake in it.
So this will come in under plan change 19 with some addendums to 19, right?
It won't be an addendum to 19, it'll be a new plan change.
Oh, okay.
It'll come once council has adopted the spatial plan, then we do a plan change process. It'll be, probably we've got 23 going on to October, so there's probably 24 in the fire. So it'll be a subsequent plan change. So the other beige colour there that goes along Lady Smith Road is rural residential. That's a piece of work that we're working on this year in terms of the district plan. So that rural residential is an area that's replicated in the Vincent District plan for the area Airport Road, in Springbrook. So it's that area through there. And at this stage,
that's rural residential.
rural residential.
So half on the south side of Lady Smith Road.
Yeah.
Is all, right down to where you do the dog there.
Hmm.
That's all plantation,
Plantation forestry. The grey bit below.
the RSA.
Yeah, the grey bit is the RSA, yes. With the dot. Yeah, this.
The RSA there comes right up to Lady Smith Road.
Oh, does it?
Mm.
Okay, interesting.
Hmm.
All right,
Until it gets down to probably
it's quite steep there though, isn't it? That
Huh?
it's quite steep, that top.
Yeah. That's,
yeah, there's
So maybe there isn't any.
So
yeah,
there's
I'll
a
get
few
into
houses
that.
and then there's a whole lot of pine trees.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that's the
Yeah.
RSA.
right.
so does this line follow a property boundary? Is it?
Yes, it does. I think that's probably what they've done, yeah. But if it's not appropriate, I know that Louise Vandervoort and I walked down through here, and that RSA land is pretty bad.
Until about here,
Yeah,
it's down, you got houses down to about.
yeah.
And this bit down here is RSA.
So
So
we,
it's a little bit grey,
yeah.
but down here they call that,
Yeah, that's on that side though, isn't it?
no, it's on this.
So they're on that side as well. Okay, all right.
When
We
you
can
come
go
right down to into here and
Yeah.
it's,
local context, yeah.
there's orchard up
I
and.
know, yeah, because there was some talk about using that RSA land, and Louise Vandervoort and I went down and walked down there. It's pretty rough and very unstable. So to build anything.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, but there was a lot of people saying that, you know, we could just build on it, we could have a house on it and have used, but
Right, if you want to.
it's probably not a bad recreation area.
So you've got here,
Yeah,
and here,
yeah,
you've got a little bit of it above here, this is that productive. And you've got about 4 hectares of orchard here. That's the only orchard that's up to.
yes. And then up here we've got this.
Remarkable, it's 100 acres further up the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
But, and we've got Roseburn through here, but in
But
this area
it's
here,
C3, like, so it's fine.
there's not a lot of productive land in there.
Okay.
You know, and it's less land under production. It's all, right, it's all been pulled out. All been pulled out.
Yeah. It doesn't necessarily follow that it's not productive though, just because someone's chosen
No,
to take
it's
trees out.
to put a boundary.
Yeah. That's why we did the top of the hill, because that seemed like a
Yeah,
logical
that's
boundary.
not there, not
Yeah.
there. If that makes
What do you
sense.
think we're missing?
Yeah.
That's the way you should definitely use this in here.
Okay,
And standalone unit, it's not viable.
yeah,
That orchard's in the state, this is the orchard that's in here is in the state it's in because it's not viable. And we know that one's not viable because we used to lease that one as well.
okay. So what would you suggest?
No further.
Sorry, just
Lifestyle blocks on that would be really good because it's,
Well, that's what they're doing, it's on 7 titles and it's being sold well.
It's been rural residential since 1998,
Yeah.
and I can count on my hand the number of opportunities that have been taken up in the last 30 odd years.
That's because it's held as a generational auction,
Okay,
but it's becoming, too hard to manage.
yeah,
We sold off the apple block down the bottom of the hill, right at the end of the road.
okay, Yeah.
Why they want to subdivide it rather than keep auctioning.
yeah,
And this
Well-
one up here, that's all farmland. That bounds onto Mark's place. So, you know, and I think I said this to you a while back, that the viability of small block orchards is going against the grain of maintaining productive land. So I had this conversation with Nick the other day about
yeah,
horticulture and development of horticulture in the valley. Look at the number of small block family owned orchards that used to be here, measured by the number of roadstools. Probably 20% of what used to be
right,
here. When our place along in Scotland Street is not what we would invest in as an orchard. It just doesn't make enough money to do it. It needs to be the economies of scale.
and now too, a lot of it, like our bigger individual apple orchards, a lot of them now have been torn up by Mr. Crunch.
so I just want to put some context around this. That came from Orchardist,
From where?
Orchardist, and Port New Zealand. So when we were in the workshops, so that was them that said, we don't want any of this public land to be, yeah, so that there was where that came from.
So, you know, when you go up the hill,
It wasn't something that we,
no.
that we, or even the urban designers, excuse me.
So when you go up the hill and you go along the flat before you get to the airstrip, all that land, on the left-hand side of the Gallic Road was subdivided to small blocks. There's now got a really great big, irrigator on it and it's used for dairy grazing. I don't know whether the consent still sits there for the small block development, but I mean, it was just primary to one.
Yeah. I think, we definitely need to look at that block, the RSA block. Yeah, but I guess I'm a little reluctant with the production of that grey because that's been out in public forum multiple times. We got strong feedback through the workshops with Port New Zealand and a couple of orchardists that, so, yeah, I think if we were gonna, and I guess the other thing too is around yield. And what we actually yield and what we actually need realistically and what we can service. And that's a really important consideration because one of the things we do when we're looking at, particularly when we do plan changes, is thinking about can we service it? Because a lot of councils up north have got themselves in a pickle because they've given consent for developments that the water and wastewater infrastructure can't manage. So we're not in that business. The stuff we've got in here, we can manage. We've been told by Three Waters they can manage it. They've got there's some compliance stuff, but that's neither here nor there in terms of this. But it's about that capacity side of things. We have to think about that.
That's conversation you would get. Yeah, exactly. Conversation.
Yeah.
Anything around that network capacity.
Yeah.
And for the water. It's fascinating.
So, but if you went to, so like with the agriculture, okay, that's classed as highly productive and it's now rural residential. So that goes down to what?
To rural.
2 point, what's the smallest?
Currently,
Yeah.
currently it can go an average of 2 hectares.
2 hectares. So if you did 2 hectare blocks up there, would you need to be on services or can you septic tank and for?
You could, yeah, you could, yeah. If it was to stay as rural, that large rural residential, which is rural lifestyle. Whereas the other stuff, the kind of darker beige is a new thing that we're bringing in, that we brought in through Vincent, which is around 1 hectare, it's slightly smaller.
1,000 squares.
So, yeah, I mean, yeah. That is an option. It's not one that came through feedback, right?
So when you say it didn't come through the feedback, what sort of scope or sort of in the demographic of the community to just actually get in the door?
And in terms of the feedback, I haven't got that information on me. We presented that a few months back. I can't remember off the top of my head, but we put out, you'll recall, a draft document.
Yeah.
And we got pretty good feedback, a lot of feedback, not a lot of survey stuff. We did drop-ins, but we probably spoke to well over 120 people across the valley, which is actually not
That's
bad.
good.
Because we set up at Miller's Flat and at Ettrick and what have you. So we did the rounds. We had a lot of really good conversations with people, which changed some of the stuff that was going on in here. The valley tends not to respond to surveys. The best way for us is to actually get the verbatim discussions at the drop-ins, and that seems to be like an effective way of communicating with people. It seems to be the preferred method. They would rather people, it appears that they would rather we front up and have the conversation than email them a survey. So there was quite, I'm reasonably confident in terms of the number of people that we talked to, and I remember at one point thinking it's all over 120, because we kept a list of how many people, what they said. I just don't have that on me, but it was a lot of people across the valley. So
Ettrick turned out was good, eh?
Ettrick turned out well. Miller's Flat turned out really well. In fact, we've had pretty good turnout across the board. Roxburgh Village, not so much. But then we were told by the people that turned up at the first workshop that they kind of associate themselves with Roxburgh Township anyway, so you know, they didn't think they needed a separate one. So, but having said that, there was only 5 people there. So, but Ettrick Hall was full, Miller's Flat. So, but yeah, so we've had really good feedback through that.
Yeah, my sense from from discussing with Paula, who was kind of a big part of that from my team, she was very happy with the level of engagement from that came through. And as Anne says, not survey based, more the quantitative
Surveys are
sessions.
I went to 2 sessions. One was at the Roxburgh Hall, one was at the Ettrick Hall.
Yeah.
And both were like,
Yeah.
well,
I mean, I'm seriously impressed that was like that level of engagement.
There was a lot of people. Yeah, and it, like, it's like at the Ettrick Hall, for example, I was right at the back. The hall was full. There was no space. So, yeah,
Good.
it's and same with us.
And the neighbours were quiet.
They were quiet. Well, they were reasonably quiet. They're almost a bit quiet, actually. Ettrick, to be fair. We would have liked a bit more feedback. They seem generally pretty happy, not particularly wanting a lot.
Look behind your back.
Probably, but we can't say that we had that we were given the opportunity. So, but I mean, this will provide. So I don't. just want to, I guess, remind the board that when we did the initial engagement, the initial workshops with the key stakeholders, the decision was to take a growth, like an accelerated growth approach to the yield that we were looking for. So what this delivers is well beyond what the growth projections suggest we need for the valley for the next 30 years. So it's well beyond that. Yeah, if we start to add in, well, probably not so much the rural residential or that rural lifestyle, as just pointed out, that you would have their own, potentially their own water and wastewater. But everything else, council made a decision with the Vincent spatial planning that smaller rural residential around the 1 hectare and the and definitely the large block residential. The large block will be fully evacuated, water and waste, and potentially also the livestock site, that 1 hectare, because having a septic tank and a bore, maybe one or the other for that, like there might be the council water, but they're in septic tank or something like that. With those smaller lots, you run into a few issues. We also do have the Clutha there as well, and there's some cultural issues associated with septic tanks and things like that, actually close to the river and what have you. So we do need to think about that as well. All these ones goes. Yeah. Okay.
No, right.
Yeah. So so that we did get quite strong feedback about that rezoning that land because it is LUC3. And there hasn't been anything to suggest that they want the lifestyle subdivision. There's one quite recently just around the cemetery, but that's the only one that I can think of. So that's been done recently. So so there is that. What else am I? Lost my train of thought now.
Can I ask the
Sure.
this grey block down here by on the golf course, that block there by the.
Oh, yeah.
Existing block, is it?
Yes, it's an existing rural block sitting
Okay.
in the middle of the golf course. So we haven't kind of played with that at the moment. It is an odd arrangement. It's historic. So.
Right.
So some people from the Southern Catlins.
Okay. Right. I won't ask any more questions.
No, there's a house on there. So yes,
Go down to 3.
it's an existing house. So providing for the large lot residential there.
You guys know too much about each other.
Yeah.
You know too much about each other.
So that large lot residential is a typology we don't currently have in the back. So that's something that we'll be putting in there. One of the biggest things in Roxburgh is the allodial of van hazard. So the black, it's not the hatch there that runs right the way through. That is a major issue for us to work our way through. So currently we've been working with Otago Regional Council, and they're just about to let a contract for a piece of work on that, and we should have some preliminary at the end of this year or early next year about what that looks like. So they're doing more detailed. So we've had the opportunity to speak with them about what we need in terms of information that will inform what we can and can't do in these areas, and perhaps narrow down where we can, if it's, the risk is lower or what that might look like. So
Is there going to be any managed retreat at the bottom of the reservoir, do you reckon, or
we don't
deem it as a hazard?
no, and certainly there's been no suggestion of managed retreat at this point, but this piece of work will inform any future decisions, because it's the level of detail that we need to put, that not us and the regional council need to think about that. But
So like after that last blowout that we had a number of years ago at Reservoir Creek, and the guy from the regional council was saying that everything sort of backed up when it came down here and it swept into the river and then it backed up.
Yeah.
And I never got a chance to ask them, does anybody know if that's been cleared at all? Do they get in there with a jig? He was saying part of the problem with when Roxburgh flooded with that last big under plum.
Was that
Yeah.
Jean-Luc? Is that Jean-Luc?
Yes,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes. So he was saying that what happened when everything came down Reservoir Creek, it actually backed up in the mouth of going into the river.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that's been cleared or
no,
whether it's still there, because that probably really
he
needs to
said
be
that.
cleared.
Yeah, I've mentioned that to him when he's, yeah.
It's already going to be there. It's already going to be backed up.
Yeah, but it's not so much that's the problem. So the biggest concern is what's up top. And with heavy rainfall, like, so the more some of the really heavy stuff coming down, the risk is, and the reason that's kind of fan shaped is what happens is the big boulders can potentially come down, they could fan out and they could go through someone's house.
Yeah.
So they want to understand what's up there, understand what the risk is. And then we can be better informed.
But if they cleared,
The flooding is not the big issue, it's the rock fill that's the issue.
but if they cleared that,
Yeah.
then everything would go into the river. If it's already backed up now, it's going to make, even if it's a smaller,
Yeah,
it's going to make a problem.
they're intending to do that, it's my understanding.
That's
No. But it was good to, because we have been working with the hazard team, it was good to have the conversation at the time when they are putting together the scope of works. So we were able to tell them what we needed for this purpose in terms of understanding what the risks were. So that's it.
What's the level of detail that's coming out of, ORC?
Yeah.
They're gonna be, you already said. How committed are they to the outcomes of what they're producing in terms of, I guess, if you look at what is on this, plan here, there's a constraint around developing some areas.
Well, if you note, we
No.
called it an illegal fan investigation area. So here, I guess the purpose of the spatial plan is a kind of, it's like a long-term kind of future view of what things, a snapshot of, this is what it could look like. It's a direction of travel. We need to do some more work. So the options are we stop until we know. And that could be, like they said that we could have some preliminary stuff sort of end of this year, early next year. But in terms of the development, the level of development here, it doesn't actually change anything for those properties. But what we do need to understand, so what the proposed zoning in here is not really changing. It's staying low density. It's in that kind of low density area.
Yeah,
But it's just being aware of it,
Yeah.
and they're already aware of it. One thing that's really important is that we are aware that insurance companies are not renewing or making it very difficult for people to get insurance when there are any hazard things on the property. So the discussions we've been having with the ORC is around that. They're very aware. John Luke and his team are very aware of that. And so for us, what we've emphasised is that we need some certainty around this because people need, if there's a real risk, people need to know what that risk is, and it needs to be a real risk, not a high level once in 150 year kind of. It needs to be at a land use level. It needs to be on the ground. What could potentially happen to those properties? So, but those properties that perhaps are just caught up in the mix because there happens to be an illegal fan area, hopefully we'll be able to. These lines might shift. It is the hope that these lines might shift once they do that more detailed work. At the moment, it has the database. All this stuff is based on much higher level information, whereas what we're getting next from them is more land use standards. So what happens in the ground, so in the meantime, we've just identified it as an investigation area. It reflects the status quo in terms of what Harbour Regional Council has in the database. So it's already in there. So these areas are already affecting people's properties. There was a recent subdivision in Tweed Street. They had to give a geotechnical report. Probably one of the other strategic areas is the old health camp as well, which is Hocken and Rurunaka area. So at the moment we've zoned it as residential. But there might be, we'll be having ongoing discussions with them about what that might look like in the future. There was some brief discussions, very brief discussions with them about the possibility of a multi-purpose zone, because of their future intentions for that. So, a multi-purpose zone. So it would enable certain things like quite often housing, that kind of stuff. So
What kind?
well,
Is that special needs housing or community housing?
no, it's
Rehab?
whānau based. So normally it falls on land, Maori land, but it's whānau based. So the intention, it just depends what they want. So if they were to go for something like that, there could be, it wouldn't be some subdivisions, it would be, you might have 10 houses there where whānau come and stay or live or whatever. Health is another thing that they might want to do. But we do have to have some further discussions, but for now, it's just suggested residential.
Sorry. So that's the healthcare.
Yes,
That's Rock Rock.
Mhm.
Oh, it might be around Rock Rock. Yeah, no, yeah.
With,
Right.
with the Hercules flat, you haven't rezoned that at all.
No.
You're just saying, whatever it is at the moment, that's it. We don't want any changes there, just leave it as it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that, yeah.
Yep, okay.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything more in that one. Probably the town centre area is the only other one. There's a bit of medium density and around the area that's sort of around that kind of red. The red is the commercial area, so the orange area, which is not, so it's not printed out very well, is that higher density, which is down to 200 square metres type thing. So,
And what height?
well, that's the thing, is that we had some feedback. So for example, in Alexandra and in Cromwell, it's 3 stories, goes to 11 metres, but in 5, it's only 2 stories. So we had quite a lot of feedback from people saying that they didn't think 3 stories was appropriate in Roxburgh. So possibly using the Clyde scenario of perhaps 2 stories in there. So yeah,
That's
any
good.
feedback on
So
that.
that's what 11 metres.
So,
No, it would be less than that.
so like if you look at all plans that you've put there, is there anything that you think that we should be concerned about?
No, I don't think so. We've suggested using a mechanism called rural settlement zones for Roxburgh Hydro Village, Port Ettrick and Millers Platte. And what that is, we do have them elsewhere. We've got them in places like Lauder and Turihua. They are a bit of a mixture, a little bit of commercial, a little bit of residential, but not sort of 3 houses this and 2 houses there. It's just one zone, so you can have that kind of mixed, small scale commercial, little shop, cafe.
So that allows you discretion based on someone.
Yeah, so we'll be looking, at the moment, you can have, like, there's a certain degree of commercial allowed and residential allowed, so we'll be looking at that when we do the rural review. Yeah.
So, I mean, if you go into, well, just trying to remember where it was, and like that, well, I mean, Lake Hayes Estate and those places, where the medium density has got 2.5 story houses, banging windows when they open them.
Oh, okay. Ours wouldn't do that.
Right.
And the reason they wouldn't is that we've got design guidelines. So with our medium density, we brought in design guidelines, which are now incorporated into the district plan by reference.
Yeah.
One of the things that we did when we were looking at the medium density, because it was such a shift for central Otago, this is through Plan Change 19, is we worked with Bottom School, who did the government, the 3x3, the government version, who did their guidelines afterwards. So we worked with them on that and looked at if it was to go 3-story, for example, just go to 11 metres. And these were the yards. What would this look like? And when we've got things like access to light, and then there's recession planes, and so we played with the height in the yards and the site coverage, etc. So that they've got this model. So we wanted to avoid what in planning terms we call concrete block sausage flats. So we actually came up with, for example, rather than having 5 in a row like that, 5 blocks in a row, you have 2 at the front, 3 at the back, and all the parking in the back. So and you get that. So that's the kind of model that we've got. So in the medium density, you have to comply with the guideline. So there won't be any windows fitting or anything like that. That's just what it's physically not possible for that to occur because of the way we've done the and yeah, because we literally, they played with the model and said, well, if we push the height, then what does that look like? And so we played around with it, with the yards and the height, so, and the bulk, which is the side coverage, to work out what we would end
A
up.
lot of that affordable housing type models end up with Constantine.
Sausage flats. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm just
See
thinking.
those ones they built at Arrowtown, they heat up on a 20-degree day. The top bedroom is up to 40 degrees.
Yeah.
Crazy, some of it.
Yeah. So, but yeah, the guidelines require certain things in terms of access to outdoor space and site coverage, and a certain amount of the site has to be very like vegetation of some sort. So there's all of that in the guidelines. So the medium density is required to comply with those guidelines, and through Plan Change 19, it no longer sits outside the plan, which it did originally. It's now being incorporated by reference, so it's part of the plan. So it's in there now. So that's how we would manage that.
I've got a question on that track.
Yeah.
You didn't rezone the COJ's area, you just left it as is?
Yeah.
Even though it is industrial, you just said, right.
Well, it's not really, well, it's not
heavy industrial.
It's not really industrial. It's a packing shed, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's part of that rural activity. So we've left it in the rural context. The risk being that we could, if we rezone it industrial, we could actually get a genuine industrial.
I see. Doesn't stop you from approving something if they wanted to grow
You can
it.
apply for a consent,
Yes, yeah.
but it would just enable us to
Open that.
perhaps manage what that might look like, because if we did rezone it industrial, then it potentially could be something quite heavy and you lose your ability to manage that. And at the moment, what it is, while it might be, it's probably not really industrial, it's ancillary to a permitted activity is probably where it sits at the moment, and being a packing issue. So
It's discretionary. Well,
yeah, well, it doesn't need.
council has the discretion over what the land use.
Well, if it were to be something that was like, if it was to depart from being something that's ancillary to that orchard activity, if somebody, for example, decided they want to manufacture concrete blocks or something on the site, if we rezone it industrial, then it's about managing the impact of that on the road, and there's a whole lot of other things as well. The noise, traffic, trucks, all of that kind of stuff. We didn't have any requests to rezone it either. Jackie was part of the, Jackie Van Walk was part of the stakeholder group, so. Started this do that. So, everybody very keen on the future potential of some kind of walking and cycling bridge across from it. And it is a future potential, but the business group's quite keen on, looking at what that might look like. And,
It would just be really nice to bring some of that cycle money into Utrecht.
Yeah.
Because we just miss out completely.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a thriving little business there or two that I think could
Yeah. And so,
do with it.
yeah, and I think that there's definitely an option for that.
I'm going to talk to the miners
So
about that.
just, yeah, with that bridge, I mean, that wouldn't be something the council would get involved with though, is it?
No,
No.
not necessarily.
So it would have to be community driven. Yeah.
And look, if there was ever any funding available from central government, again, that could be an opportunity. It's certainly not.
I mean, we've also got the problem of the missing link in the main cycle trail,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like.
which would make that bridge
Well,
viable.
yeah. Well, it's got consent, the missing link.
Is it really?
Yeah,
Has the landowner agreed?
well, it's got consent, they've moved it. So there's a consent to join it up between here and outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what we're talking about?
Yeah.
And no, he hasn't agreed yet, but he's working on it.
Well, no, there's consent.
It's funding now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Oh, really? Well, that's good news.
And some other, essentially.
but there's consent for it. So that's location.
Oh, there is.
Yeah, there's a resource consent for it to not be on that property.
Okay. Well, to move to a different location, slightly. Okay.
Yeah, in the river margin.
Well, that's fantastic news.
Not for the
There's a-
checkbook, guys.
There's well,
Well,
That's a good start. There's
Yeah.
a whole lot more.
There's more steps to take.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the business group, we've said that that's a key driver for tourism for us. Because, you know, not many Otago people will want to pay $150 for a jet boat,
no,
and no Otago people will pay twice for a jet boat. Some might just pay once, and some will. But if there was no jet
Yeah.
boat, notwithstanding it's a great trip I hear, but if there's none, then that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
and I think if you're going to choose priorities, that would, as going to that would be
The-
if there was funding available for,
That would have to double the volumes of that track. I
yeah,
thought, if you don't have to pay $150 or whatever the number is.
yeah. But look, in the future, bear in mind this is 30 year.
Yeah.
How often will this get reviewed?
Sorry?
How often will this get reviewed?
When we do the plan changes, we'll look at, once we rezone, we'll be rezoning effectively 30 years worth of growth. So,
But along the way,
along the way, we'll check in on some of the things that we need to understand. So we're required every 10 years to review the plan. And at that point, if there, for example, if we rezone whatever's in the spatial plan and then come along in 10 years' time to have another look at the district plan review, depending on who knows where they are, if things going to land. But at the moment it's 10 years, so then we would have another look at it. We would look at the growth, and so we would have to be constantly checking in. Certainly every 10 years, an absolute minimum. I would, yeah. Well, and we don't know how fast. I mean, at the moment, there's record houses for us being built in the valley at the moment. There's and while it doesn't look like it on a prominent scale, for the Teviot Valley, I think there's 7 or 8 houses currently under construction, and that's quite a lot.
and some.
Yeah,
That is a lot.
that's a lot for us.
Yeah.
And even Stu Geddes is now back at council. And he did a drive along when he was used to the motels here, and Stu noted the number of houses and he said,
So given that we just talked about it before, that, Peter made the point that we haven't gone for high growth, we've gone for aspirational growth,
yes,
being 500 odd houses over
Yeah.
30 years.
correct.
Well, if you assume that would have some sort of growth curve that wasn't just flat and wasn't, it had a curve that went like that, not even in that. So
Yeah,
not an exponential sort of thing as you got towards the last dates. You'd have to say that if it was just flat, it would be 15, 16 houses a year. Well, we've got 7 or 8 this year straight away.
Yeah.
So, you know, the chance of us blitzing it is based on a sample of
It
1
may
year.
well happen. It may well happen. I mean, one of the biggest problems is availability of land. I mean, you know, I mean, Quail Haven's sat there for what, 15 odd years, and it's now filling up. But there are other areas that are starting to infill as well.
Well, I see it as chicken, and just as per our previous conversation we had, I see it as chicken and egg sort of thing.
Yeah.
We've got a really good looking town street, and it's a welcoming environment. People are going to want to come here. If we've got the street as it is at the moment, people are going to go, this place looks a bit shit. Why would I ever want to live here? So
There's
it's,
a couple of breweries, like.
yeah, exactly. But it's incumbent upon us as a board to have some vision and say, look, let's make this town look really great. Then, you know, and that will create some people to come. The reverse is also true. People come and then there's the critical mass to make it great. But if we just sit back and do nothing, you know, it's
I
going to
think
take a while.
it feels like there's a bit of momentum at the moment. To me, it feels like there's a bit of momentum at the moment. There's a lot of houses aren't hanging around long. They're selling fast again. And the prices have gone up again, but they're still affordable.
Again, it's that,
You know,
it's that trickle down too, because you're only 2 hours from everywhere.
Yeah.
At least 2 hours.
Anyway,
so the other one, probably the only other one will be Miller's Flat, which is the last one. Where we've made a few changes. So in response to some feedback that we got from the last drop-ins, we shifted where the kind of potential booking and cycling trails might go. But we've also extended in response to the flood area on the riverside of Teviot Road, which is a very real, there are photos, a very real flood area. So the feedback we got quite strongly through the drop-ins was that, you know, we need to possibly look, if we want to provide for growth in Miller's Flat, at the other side of the road a little bit more, because while that stuff down the bottom is zoned for lifestyle, it is genuinely floodplain. And people down in that area, we were told, are unable to get insurance at the moment. So we've extended along a little bit beyond Oven Hill, what's Oven Hill Road?
Yeah.
Something right along there a little bit more. Again, sort of following the property lines to put a little bit more of the large lot residential through there, which again would be that 1,500 squares. But, excuse me, with Miller's Flat, they have a water scheme that's a good water scheme, and it's well managed, and we're told there's should be capacity for this. So wastewater there is no reticulated wastewater, so that does affect particularly with the yellow stuff, which is, if there was reticulated wastewater, that could go down a lot smaller. But it does restrict it down to 800 square metres because they need to have a septic tank. That's not an issue if they have reticulated water. It becomes an issue if they don't have reticulated water supplies. So again, they'll be looking at that. Yeah, so we had really good feedback from that. It's quite good. Again, keeping that lifestyle area, which is the 1 hectare brown area, which has been there since 1998, it's still there.
So again, the large lot zone that you say for Miller's Flat is
1,500.
likely to be 1,500.
Yeah,
Okay.
and you'll see that the rural settlement we've taken along both sides, where the swimming pool is, right along through the campground, and also on the other side, which is sort of around where the cafe and those houses are there, and right the way along. So what that does is it should provide a little bit of flexibility in terms of a mix of low-level commercial, bit of residential, rather than sort of choosing winners in terms of 3 properties for this and 2 properties for that. Just a way to be a little bit more flexible with those smaller towns.
And the green track around the back of Miller's Flat, just across from the bridge.
Envisaged to be in the road reserve.
So it's not as wide as the section.
No. I've got to get them to narrow that.
Yeah. Okay.
And sort of following, we had, originally the urban designers had it running right around the outside of the properties, and we had quite strong feedback. It was coming through here as well, so we had quite strong feedback.
Yeah.
This would be a more logical way of doing it, and it just kind of signals where, if there's funding available in the future, that we would actually put sort of more formalised walking and cycling on the roads through those areas.
Quite steep, that hill, going up
Yeah.
Garden Hill.
Yeah.
Oh,
They seem to think they can do it.
you're
Big
becoming,
kids' school country runs, so you know,
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the intention is to get this to, sort of use on the graphics and things, so, yeah.
Just got a question about the flood zone in the Lewis. So we had those big ones, was it not?
The floods, 97,
Yeah.
I think so. And Barbara Wellington, you have any copies of all the photos?
So a lot of that is then. We're wondering.
Yeah, to an extent, but then like,
In this way, because it's too late. So whether that would happen, let them find
Thank you. So I will have a look at the RSA land.
Well, you and I can go whenever we drive
Yeah,
around,
yeah.
if you want.
I'm happy to do that. Yeah. So, yeah. I'm happy to have a look at that.
Alright.
So if there's any other feedback we have for us, if we could get that in the next couple of weeks, that'd be great.
Yeah.
If you think of anything, once we have a chance to have a look.
so what's the next steps from here, Anne?
Hopefully we'll get the document finalised, get it to the October council meeting, which is I think October 30, is it? And the 31st.
We're the third.
Yeah, council meeting. And then, after that, we'll be looking at, incorporating it into the plan change process.
Cool.
Yeah. And with plan change 19, we've got a few appeals that we'll work through because that decision is beyond challenge now. So we'll work through the appeals, and the easiest thing, for the Teviot Valley is now is we've got that framework in place, which was something we didn't have in the problem in Vincent. When that new framework's in place, it's just a relearning exercise for the valley. So it's still the same process, but much more straightforward and less likely to present any issues or concerns. Yeah. That's next steps. Very exciting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anne.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the pie.
No worries. Pie, cake.
Yeah.
We don't live in Roxburgh for nothing.
No. Righty.
Thank you very much.
So that's the shorter of the two workshops.
I'm sorry, I was only going to be 15 minutes. I lied. I'm going to take my
Just because there might be a few questions.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Anne.
Thanks, Anne. Now, Mark and Jill, we're going to be using the screen behind you. So it may be easier if you kind of want to shimmy around the table a little bit. Sure.
Okay, this should be done.
Right. Now, I've rather unhelpfully left my notes back in my desk, but I have my very, very learned colleagues beside me who have helped me through this. And we also have Alex online, do we?
Yes, I do, yeah.
Excellent. So Alex is going to help take the notes out of this. So what we're doing, so this session today is part of our review of policies as we go into the long-term plan. So this is not about what's the size of the pot, but it's about the policy that oversees the grant funds, both community grants and promotions grants. What we're doing is going around to each of the community boards right now in this round, and then taking the taking the answers we get to certain questions or certain ideas and recommendations up to a council workshop at the end of this month for council to then give us direction. What will then happen is we will form up a paper which will form the policy and take that to council for a final decision in October, I think it was.
So what's driving?
It happens every time we have an LTP. So it's the LTP. It's one of the LTP documents that's reviewed.
Grants policy is reviewed.
It's part of the LTP process.
So,
Correct.
It's
It's also, we've had a lot of questions about grants over the years. So, yeah, we've got some stuff in here that you'll see, possibly ideas that may have come from this table or things that you'll get to see. So we're going to go through, we'll ask you some questions. We'll also put up some recommendations from staff, and then we'll also put up some other ideas that have kind of emerged over the last few years of running grants. And yeah, just have a bit of a chat. So what works for you? So what we do want to understand is, as the Teviot Valley Community Board, what about grants works well for you and your community? Now, remembering grants is in this context is both the community grant, which Rebecca looks after for us, and then the promotions grant, which Anthony will look after for us.
You want me to answer that?
Well, anyone can.
What works?
What works well? Why do you do this?
The fact that we've got the flexibility and the ability to provide a very tangible level of support to community groups.
In fact, it's local within our ward.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, we've got a huge number of community groups in this valley. I think the last time I asked about it was over 150. We probably see grant applications from less than 10% of that. So that sort of says to me that the ones that are needing the support are actually applying. The others may not need the support, so it's but it is a very tangible way of supporting.
Or they may not know about it.
I think they all know about it, but there's bang for bucks than people's.
It's a small town, you can guarantee that one that's getting a grant from somewhere is on something
Like
that's.
you don't get a rodeo club applying for a grant.
We have further slides that might lead to that.
Why
So
not?
let's look at what works well. And we will talk about what doesn't. What else? No, Jill?
Works well.
I've
Some
got
of the other
nothing,
things,
I've
other
got really nothing to add to, to the positive side of what works. People who are wanting the money that they come, they ask, and, and we haven't really turned down much, have we?
I think regularity is probably pretty good, pretty right. And if it was once a year, it'd be too short, too long. If it was once every 3 months, it'd be.
Yep.
Too much.
I'll tell you what's working well. That's the public forum where people are coming, like this morning was awesome.
Yep.
The Puna Rangatahi, I didn't have a clue what they did, but Cass came in and did a really good job at sort of broadening our thinking on it.
So it's creating a connection to community.
Didn't you apply last year, get the client?
No.
Remember? There was a group like that.
Last year.
You
Yeah.
had the Kahui Apo, but
Yes, sir.
we funded that as well. And that was to get kids from Miller's Flat to Alex.
That's right, so we paid for the bus or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that part of it works well, like the interaction in terms of bringing them in here.
Yep.
Was real good.
Cool. Okay. This leads to an obvious next question. What doesn't work? So we want to hear and understand what doesn't work for you and your community. And we're particularly interested to hear what solutions you might have.
What doesn't work is the situation we've got found ourselves in this morning.
Yeah.
Is thinking that we should allocate out of our reserves and going back to council, having to go back to council, even though originally the money was given to us and approved.
Yep.
I don't
confused.
quite understand that.
No,
No,
exactly.
I should-
We've
So-
either got a reserve or we're in debt.
Well, no, see, what it is, so council is the pot that has all the money, right? It sits in there, right? And yes, Teviot Valley has its reserves and they could be in surplus, but council's overall reserves are currently in debt.
Right,
So any money that is taken, even if you've got a surplus in your area, any money that is taken from a reserve fund in anywhere in, across the district puts council further into debt because the overall reserve fund of the
So
organisation is
there's
currently.
actually no reserve.
Well, this is the challenge. So there are reserves, because there are reserves, but overall, if you looked at it, the organisation is in negative or deficit in reserves.
but if the council was in minus 100 and all the combined wards plus 50, we take some out of the combined wards, then the net, it was minus 350 becomes minus 360 or 70.
Yeah,
In total.
yeah. However the math works, essentially,
But- so the bank account, when you have to actually go and pay it, goes down.
so what I'm saying is ignore what you've got at a board level,
Yeah.
because the council, even your board reserves are wrapped up in that council overall reserve. So all reserves across everywhere that sits under council, which includes wards,
Yeah.
are in deficit.
Right, okay,
So any take further,
Yeah.
puts it further into deficit,
yes.
hence the need to go.
So take it back take it back a step.
I'm just repeating, like, this is the guidance and best practice that's given to us from finance. So I don't disagree with your frustration.
Normally we would always make a reserve decision go to council. We only had that provision to not because we had that previous, but since council gave that previous resolution, they've been advised about this situation. And so it's sort of just a time that we then
Yeah.
found out the impact today.
So when the $5,000 was given back in 2019, so, and it wasn't spent, there was $1,000 put into reserves.
Yeah.
That $5,000 was already in
Yes,
fact.
already rated.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
If we hadn't spent the $5,000,
Correct.
we wouldn't have had to go get more approval.
That's right.
So what they're saying now is that we have to get approval again, which doesn't make sense to me.
It's
It's-
because it
it's
puts
because-
council further into debt.
And
It's the management of the cash.
but no, because if you hadn't had that resolution, you would have had to have done that. And the reason for that is because the board only has the delegation to operate within existing policy and budgets. And if you spend more than budgets or policy, then it's a recommendation to council.
Yeah, I mean, that
Yeah,
makes sense.
so that's the normal rule. This case, we just had this thing that happened through the annual plan conversation as well.
Okay,
So yes, acknowledging this morning was a mess. Got that? What else?
I'm interested in the too hard, and I suspect it's because bang for buck norm, because we try and make our forms are probably simpler than anyone else's, because we design them ourselves.
so if you look at the four submissions we had in front of us this morning, they leave the content of the
86
for the
pages.
Rangatahi one, 93 pages.
That's because they're seasoned grant
They know what they're doing.
advisors. They know what they're doing, so they've
Well,
got,
I get $200,000 a year in grants, so.
they've got a package, that's right.
Yeah.
So they've got a package.
Yeah, but put that into the museum space,
Yeah.
or even into the recent
Yeah.
space. For me to have to do it, and as Anne did for this one, because I asked her to do it, to turn around and have to, for $5,000 or $1,000, have to spend 4 to 5 hours chasing around, putting a grant submission together.
Yeah.
That's where I'm talking about bang for bucks.
For me, like I go to all the grant funding clinics,
Mm.
and we talk about, because it's it's ratepayers' money that is.
It is.
that is-
It's
So,
right.
so it's the balance between, being accountable for that and these on applicants, and I try and be as, like, Rotary did not want to do an online application.
Yeah.
So I designed this form, I designed a form especially for them to fill in by pen, so we try and make it as easy as
Yeah,
possible.
yeah.
We've had applicants that are, not a formal like don't even have a bank account, and so we worked with them to figure out how we could pay a grant, they could pay and we'll pay them back, and so we try and work with them as we can, but if there's ways that we can make it easier, we're still with that public accountability level.
Could you have like a two level thing? So
We had for accountability, so for, up to $1,000 to report back, you just need to let us know how it went, provide a couple of pictures if that's appropriate.
Yeah.
Between 1,000 and 9,099, you need to do this.
Yeah.
For over 10,000, you need to report back to the board or council, provide your annual accounts and your
And the application process though, could you make that a little bit simpler?
So we've got some stuff that might join this later.
Oh, you've got one, yeah.
Yeah, the application process is not overly onerous. Onerous, yeah. In all reality, for public money and access to it, it's not actually that hard. It's an accurate one.
4 or 5, yeah, it should be for us.
So I think we're obviously coming from that applicant side, not from what you're offering or we're offering. It's, I mean, being bloody treasurer of the entertainment centre is so time consuming. So time. And that's what I'm sort of trying to say, is that there's a sense of where do I spend my time best? And that's being reflected in the level of interest in the grants that are being applied for.
So the questions we ask of what are you applying for? Your name, your contact person, your phone number, your email, your address, about the project, give us a description of it. When does it start? When does it finish? How will it meet the funding criteria? What measures will you take to make sure it's successful? Has it happened before? Is it likely to happen all the time or not? Are you aware of any other events happening at the same time? Your budget, what bit are you asking the board to fund? What will happen in any surplus funds? Have you asked for money for anyone else? Who? That's it. And attach your budget. So you attach your budget, your project plan, information about other funding, and then if it's over 10,000, financial accounts. If it's
I
not,
think I was probably blown away by the Mary one that I saw
yeah,
30, 40, 50 pages.
that's just their.
Just an annual report.
They're just sitting there.
Yeah.
But so it's
That's the questions.
it's no different to what for any of those places that you go to for funding.
Yeah.
But it's people's time.
Yeah.
Yep. The time factor. So I think that there's nothing more simple than what we've got would satisfy our needs in terms of understanding what the project's about.
Yeah.
But it's just coming to understand that, and it may be that the volume of money that they can ask for at any one time reflects their willingness to put time towards it. They know that there's $5,000, and as the community does, it says that everyone knows who else is putting in for it, and they ask for $1,000. What's the chances of us getting it? We might get 500. That's that decision point. So it relates to the volume of money, not so much how much work I've got to put into it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's.
I mean, I spent 6 or 7 hours putting out an application into CLT. I got $22,000. I spent 24 hours putting something into let's call it, community grants fund. And I get $1,000. That's what I'm sort of trying to.
Anything else? From members and what other?
How do we advertise the successful grants? How do we tell the community, hey, we've given this money away? It goes in the newspaper, doesn't it?
Yeah, and she'll, the journalist was here today, so she'll do a story.
Yeah.
It goes in the news, so, isn't it?
Yeah.
And most of the grants will come when they get it, they'll be saying
Thank you.
in it that you should be acknowledging the community board council for this grant through whatever your mechanism is. So for an event, it might be through their advertising posters or so that giving recognition to council for that contribution.
Yeah. Good. All right, next slide. So I just want to give you a quick reminder before we head into kind of the recommendations component around what the grant pots at a community board level, how they function essentially. So community grants come from the general ward rates. There are 2 rounds per year that are within the financial year that the rounds happen. There is provision to offer multi-year grants in year 1 of an LTP.
Which is next year.
Which this time around will be next year. It will only be obviously for a 2-year period, because it's only a 2-year LTP.
So what do you vision those sorts of grants?
That would be your band and your music.
Yeah, so yeah, New Zealand would be a great example.
And do they know this?
Not yet.
No.
So that provisions have been reintroduced, isn't it?
That was, yeah, discussion from earlier in the year when we were doing it.
Yes.
Oh, it's a new thing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Is it common, by the way, for grants to be given, as we have, for operational expenses every year?
That's the beauty of council grants. So other funders often don't do that. And that's where councils really can help groups, is because they
And that's the rest of the question. I know other grants
Yeah.
go, well, specific project, CapEx or whatever. No, we don't pay for transportation, we don't pay for electricity. But
Yeah.
we specifically can.
Yeah, so that is one of the beauties, is your grants are very broad in what they can do. Essentially, as long as it doesn't relate to alcohol,
religion,
gambling,
politics.
yeah, politics. I think
Religion.
you're pretty much good to go.
I even had the Anglicans ring me one year trying to get it, and I'm like, mate, I've got like 4 things I can't fund, and you're one of them. Oh, we won't talk about the church. I'm like, yeah.
In the community grant space, council also has a community grant pot. There is a requirement for community grants to align with community outcomes, which are currently outlined in the LTP. And applicants generally are strongly community focused and deliver on some or all of the 4 wellbeings. Promotions grants. So they are a targeted ward rate. They're 2 rounds per annum. Now, the difference with this is people are able to apply, say, in March for the financial year that begins in July. So they can apply essentially 3 or 4 months ahead of the actual financial year that is coming. The reason for that is because if we were to say you can't apply in the March round, anyone who was running an event essentially this side of Christmas would be unable to uplift any funding. So with that one works kind of half a year ahead of the community grants fund.
Subject to the
Subject to approval of budget, correct. 1 year at a time only. So in promotions grants, you cannot grant multi-year grants. You can only do it 1 year at a time. There is no pot at council level for promotions grants. They are assessed against their alignment to community outcomes, but they're also assessed against their alignment to the destination management plan and also ANZ's newly developed event framework. And applications are often focused on visitor attraction and economic benefits.
So it comes under ward,
You'll have a ward
Yeah.
promotion grant,
Ward
Right.
promotion grant.
The tourism and promotions.
tourism, residential tourism.
yeah, there should be a promotion grant, right? There's something.
Oh, Teviot, got to be honest.
Yeah, there you go.
40 cents.
It's a
There you go.
beach rate part.
40 cents.
No, it's, yeah, that's based on 400,000 capital value, it's 40 cents, 10 cents per 100,000.
Bargain, a bargain.
So if
Double.
we said we wanted to double it, it would cost me 80 cents. It would cost me an additional 40 cents if we wanted to double it.
If you had the need, like you've
Remember the
shown
need.
this round,
And we're not talking size of pot, remember today. That's not what today is about.
but that would be a good thing to squirrel away.
All right, next slide, please, Wayne. Okay, so what works well? Not sure why I put a question mark out there. But community grants. So the feedback we get from community boards, from applicants, from staff is generally community grants works really well under the current policy settings. And any recommendations we're going to give you very shortly are only very minor in the community grant area.
And just on that, it was really good having Anne fill in an application a year or two ago because she was very clear in her feedback on the grants form. And we made changes as a result to make it easier for applicants.
Yeah, it's pretty,
It was really good for us, yeah. Where she knew it, we weren't gonna say no to a grant because she gave us feedback about the form, you
yeah.
know? It was really good.
Promotion programs over a period of a few years, many years, in fact, there've been various tweaks and changes to the policy to develop it to be more workable, more accountable for those that are uplifting money, and a user-friendly experience for all those concerned. We have further recommendations, and we're also seeking guidance on our recommendations, but also other ideas that have cropped up over the last few years. Wayne.
So our promotions grant is 2,000 a year, isn't it?
Yeah. 80 cents per rate.
Well, it's based on capital value.
Okay. So these are our recommendations that we would like to get some direction from you if you are supportive or not. So introducing a chairperson's fund, which would be applicable to both community and promotions grants. It's of small value, so we've put up there up to $1,000, may be approved by the board chair out of cycle from a normal board funding round, or grants that still have to meet the criteria. Could only be funded if the funds are available, so you obviously can't go over the budget, and would be reported publicly at the next available community board meeting. So essentially, a small grant applicant doesn't have to wait for the grant.
What it is, so it's a couple of examples. So Dunedin City Council had this pot. And it was to allow small grant applications. So the example we had in Vincent was Salvation Army wanted to build a community garden, a shade thing. They needed to apply for consent, and it was like $300 or $400 consent fees. It absolutely met the criteria for the grant, but they needed, because of the grants round, they needed to pay and come back. We let them do a retrospective. Whereas it would have just been good to, I would have assessed the application, they would have filled in the application form, I assessed it, talked to the chair, say, what do you think? It was for a community garden, it was for a church utility. Another example is there is an event that wants to hire the hall, and you can't give the hall for free, but you could give them a small grant to pay for the hire of the hall.
That would get round that feed Sally, you know, like they're doing with the. With that, they wanted a few bits and pieces, but it lists the grants.
Now, and coming back to your point before about making things easier, this does not exclude the applicant from still having to do a
They have to
formal
apply.
application. It has to still do the
Still
application.
go through Kerry Light.
Still has to be assessed by the
Oh,
staff.
but I do it in a quicker, I do it and get it to the chair.
Mm.
Yeah.
Because you can't like, one example that's been touted is, call hire for funerals. Now that just doesn't meet the criteria, and so the staff advice would be no. There needs to be another way of supporting that to happen. It can't be through this process.
Right.
So it still needs to meet the criteria, so that's our job, is to advise the chair whether it doesn't.
So general direction, supportive, unsupportive?
I think it's a good idea.
I like the, I
Support.
like that.
Okay, cool, thank you. Sure, Alex is noting that. Alex?
She's right.
Correct.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I'll
Uh,
summarize at the end too, to make
Renaming
sure.
promotions, so only talking promotions grants here, obviously. Renaming promotions grants to promotions and events grants. Now, I mentioned earlier what we see in most, if not all of the promotions grants right now, is they focus on things that have a visitor attraction component to them or some kind of economic benefit. What we think is part of that is actually simply the title, because it's termed promotions and doesn't kind of feel like actually you could apply to run a really cool community event, but it might not attract a whole load of visitors and it might not make a huge, massive economic benefit, but it's still a really good event for your community to run. And so we think actually by just broadening the title, it might open up more applicants to things.
Yeah. So that's why I asked the question this morning about how many people are with a reach into the community.
So
Give them an opportunity to explain that.
around the table, support, not support?
Yes,
Support. Cool, excellent. Should have that too.
Yes.
Excellent. And promotions grants once again. So you may recall in the promotions grants policy, there is a piece in there that organisers are encouraged to become self-sustaining after 3 years. So essentially, don't keep coming back to the board for more money after 3 years. In practice, some do and some don't.
So with that, so just as an example, so say if we're doing on the Cherry House, which is a promotion thing.
Yeah.
So sort of like after 3 years, you'd expect them to be running on their own without having to.
Yeah, so under the current policy, it is encouraging them to do so. What we're suggesting here is actually we make the wording firmer, but it becomes a longer period of time. So actually it becomes more like 5 years. So it gives them a longer period of time to become self-sustaining. Yeah, but
That kind of plays into the, if we have a small pot and if you just keep getting the same people over and over for good reasons, but it doesn't give any opportunity for anyone else who also has something else for good to come in, because you funding what's already amazing.
Yeah, I just wonder whether you need to go longer.
I don't think so.
I do to say 3, but.
Okay.
And I would agree with you.
Have you got any, I'm not sure if you got Long Tree of Chaos would have been the example here of a long-standing event that you funded probably many years.
Yeah,
How many was
It's not
that
doing it.
for?
but you were saying if we did do it, if it was an annual event.
Yeah.
Then
Only
if
funded
it-
for
after
3.
3 years, we'd say, sorry, no more.
And that might answer my question about the rodeo club. Is that, but in the early days, they could have been doing it,
Yeah.
even though been in business for quite some time.
So one.
But it's from when they
Every year
apply.
rather than an organisation that is running it.
Yeah,
Yeah. It is a tricky one because some events just aren't self-sustaining. The example I gave you, but and I don't know if this helps. Because I'm a trustee in the Cogo Community Trust, so I see a lot of grant application. And the one for me is light up, is the winter festival, you know, of all the lanterns that used to go around the octagon.
Yeah.
So that was a free to participate event. Now it's a ticketed event in the grounds of First Church. And part of the rationale for that is to become self-sustaining. Now, for me, as a grant giver, for me, one of the attractions of that event is it's a complete inclusivity. That's free, and there's so few free things. So, yeah, that's a tricky one for me.
The round that went up when people found out they had to pay to get into the park, it wasn't visible.
No,
Because that was always free.
yeah,
What was
I've always
The Blossom
paid.
Festival.
And then I was 12 and didn't have to pay, so I don't know if we paid.
You showed.
It's $6 a ticket, it's not gonna break the bank.
But it was always free, but
Yes.
people really kicked out when they realised that they were going to have to pay to get into the, yeah.
Now, I sat in line and it was that saying that because what the Midwinter Carnival did is they did a summer thing where you could go and look at the lanterns and they did a Wonderland,
Yeah.
but it was $5 to get in and I was behind a family that just couldn't afford it. And I was like, yeah, but you know.
So.
Yeah, I don't know, if I think I might have changed my own mind on that then.
For what do you call them? Events, sporting events, you know,
Yeah, look, there's plenty of
there's
examples.
plenty of examples where you want to. The Clyde Food and Wine Festival, it doesn't ask us for any much.
Stand on their own 2 feet.
Stand on their own.
Spirited Women
Yeah.
came through once, haven't come back again.
Well, you're paying events to enter. I
Prospector,
mean, you're paying a fee to enter an event. And I absolutely think that this model is the right model.
So can you capture that for your event?
Maybe it's tied into the event framework.
Well, so the events framework that they're referring to is just a guide to kind of the types of events that occur across the district, and what is Tourism Central Otago's role and council's role in supporting those events. So grants is one component of that that's administered by the boards or by council. Whereas we've got some event resources that people can borrow from council in terms of gazebos and race blocks and things like that. So that and what we do as Tourism Central Otago in terms of promoting an event, and which events would be ones that we will promote a bit more because they've got higher value to the district through our work versus, oh yeah, that's got a really great event but a strong local appeal and it's to a niche audience. Then we might give it a little bit of profile, but we're not going to invest a whole lot into that.
Yeah, so I'll take back what I said about 3 years or so, leave it, you go to 5, and you still got discretion to say no. It's right, you can still say no.
But yeah, so the board would still have the ability to go and say, well, yes, we might have that in the policy, but we can still allow things to happen, which we do now, right? So.
Economically too, things that, you know, we're in a downturn and spread of 5 years might just be a little bit better.
Okay, so there's general support for a 5-year.
Up to 5 years.
Yeah.
Discretionary.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
He's nodding.
Oh, good. We can't actually see you, Alex, only Wayne can, just so you know. Right, next slide, please, Wayne. Okay, so those were the staff recommendations. Now we get into other ideas. Thoughts that have come forward from other boards, other people that we want to share with you and test with you. So capping round 1. Again, we're only talking about promotions grants. So should there be a cap on how much a single entity or group can secure in the first round of funding? So for example, if you have a $5,000 fund, you might say that one group cannot secure more than 70% of that.
On both of those, I'd say no. I'd say, you know, generally you've got people around the board that have got some amounts, they're going to say, no, I just don't think that's right. I'll vote against it. On both of those two top ones. Leave the flexibility with the board members rather than tell them what they can and can't do.
And we may, like, again, too, in a little district, we may only have one person seeking, you know, a grant. So I think it should be left with the board.
And it would have to be, if you could do it, it would have to be a percentage anyway, because our promotions.
What was the intent behind having that?
It is just to ensure that no one single group ends up getting the bulk of the fund year on year is essentially.
Yeah, I mean, that's just us and the board would see that and probably, act against that.
Okay. I guess question to you probably already answered it. I'll ask anyway. Should there be a cap on how much the board can allocate in the first funding round?
No.
So should you put in a barrier that you can't allocate 100% of your full promotion funding in round one or not?
I think it should be to the discretion of the board. I mean, we've got to make some decisions, don't we?
Oh, okay, so you're saying that, are you saying if there's $2,000 to give away, it's assumed that it's 1,000 in the first 6 months and 1,000 in the second?
Whatever percentage you choose.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Are you saying this cap would say, well, you can't give more than 60% or 75% in the first round?
Which is what we did today.
No, you know, you go away with it. You gave your whole lot.
Yeah.
That was what I mean, yeah.
Today was.
But they need to check them out.
Yes,
Yeah,
those.
today's round one.
Not for promotion.
Not. This is round one, it's because it's the first round of the financial year for community grants, but because events normally are
Round
funded a
two.
year ahead,
Oh,
yeah,
right, yeah,
it's round two for promotion.
yeah.
Okay, so I'm getting general consensus around the table is unsupportive of the top two. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, cool. I'm sure Alex is nodding away, right, mate?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks, Jeffrey.
Okay, promotions grants, once again, multi-year grants. Should a board be able to allocate multi-year promotions grants in year one of an LTP, as they currently can community grants? So for example, we're going into this new LTP. This will only be a 2-year LTP, obviously this time, but in that first round for that new LTP, should the board be able to allocate 2 years worth of funding under promotions grants?
Well, again, I think so, because I think you've got to trust the people around the board table to understand that they're giving away half of it straight away, committing half of it over the next.
Yeah.
They sort of know what they're doing.
Sorry, I should have actually followed that up by giving a little bit of staff advice on this one. So this is one staff don't support or recommend, because in the promotions space, things can change pretty rapidly year to year. And things don't always pan out in year one as it may have been anticipated it might. And you're already committed to year 2 or year 3
Yes.
in a long-term plan situation, in a typical long-term plan. Of evidence we've seen in other councils like DCC and other grants, event grants are only done on a year-by-year basis. They're not multi-year.
Cost an organisation sort of goes a little bit rogue and
Yeah.
you've committed. and-
Like a 2 year is not such a risk because it's an anomaly, this LTP, but a 3-year LTP, you committed yourself for 3 years, and if things start to not line up as they should.
Is
Can
that
you
ever
change
happened, Lord? Has that ever happened with promotion grants for a multi-year grant?
You've never been able to
Never
do
been
it.
able to do it.
But Kerry House, for example, right? You could have allocated the money over 3 years, but actually they stopped operating in year 2,
Right, okay.
as an example.
Can you change it slightly so it's an indicative grant? Somehow, you know, you can't. So someone says, I'm doing this for the next 3 years, can I have some funding? You say, we'll give you year 1, and depending on how it goes, we will give you an idea that we'll give you year 2 and 3.
It's still got to be contestable, essentially, that others could still also put their hand up, because you're not being fair or transparent to the rest of the community in that case. And that's the other piece of this, right, is in year 1, everything, you might not have anything else coming to you, but by year 3, you could have 6 really good things coming to you, but you've already committed all your money because you did a multi-year grant in year
The only, so on Otago Community Trust, I thought there were none. I've thought of 2, and that is the International Science Festival and the Otago Festival of the Arts are the only 2 event type things that receive multi-year funding, and they receive 2-year funding.
I can't think that we, for promotions that would have a multi-year funding.
Well, there's that too, and we've also spoken about that. We would like people to be self-funding and self-sustainable. And multi-year grants would push against that notion, I think.
Well, as long as it's within your 5-year timeframe.
I don't think promotions, I don't think it's necessary to have multi.
For me, it's, you know,
If you're doing an event, I'm thinking as an event, if I was an event planner, I say, I want this event and I want it to be an annual event for the foreseeable future. Where can I get my funding from? And so I come here and ask, and go, we'll give you year one. And you go, well, the event planner might go, well, I've got to buy a van, I've got to buy these flags, I've got to buy all this tents and da 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 da. Well, but you know, they might go, oh, I can't get funding for 3 years, I don't know if I'll do it.
how much are we talking about?
That's
I'm-
true.
I'm going to throw to our event planner expert in the room, Mr. Longman, who does plan events. That's the environment that event organisers operate in, right?
Yeah,
Just the way it is. Okay.
it is, yeah, primarily, there is exceptions across the board with different things, but generally you're going on a year by year basis, QLDC, DTC, these grants. At the piece there that I think is really important, and I think it falls back to that self-sustaining, is when you're looking at events, is do they actually have a plan beyond that year? If they're saying they're going to be, oh yeah, this event's going to be long running, it's going to be fantastic for the Teviot Valley, but they're only telling you stuff for year one.
Yeah.
So have they actually started their long-term thinking?
Yeah.
So I think the piece there is you're just trying to actually force them to think that way. So they may have high setup costs in year one to buy the banners or whatever it may be, which might be what they're coming to you for. Because the event will pay for itself, but it's got that initial setup.
Yeah.
All right, okay, not a big deal.
So
That's a no of it.
it's a no on that one.
Yeah.
Cool. Sure, Alex is nodding once again. Thank you. Timing.
Cheeky score.
By the end of this, we'll be able to figure out where you will sit. Timing, promotions grants. So I touched on this earlier. So right now, promotions grants, round one of promotions grants, essentially you confirm and allocate funding in March for the financial year that starts on the 1st of July. The reason for that is because if you were to do round one now in September, anything that's already gone, you can't retrospectively
Between
fund.
1 July and
And anything up to Christmas is already in train and unlikely to, well, particularly if it's an event, is unlikely to be able to actually utilise funding at such short notice. Event organisers need funding in advance to be able to get plans and things underway. So the question in there is does the board have a really desperate desire that the funding round sits inside of the financial year, or are you happy with the way it currently runs, that it sits ahead of the financial year?
Doesn't that other one still negate that a little bit? That short term, like that $1,000 up to $1,000.
A little bit, and remembering we're talking to 4 different community boards here that have got very different size pots. So it might not have a significant impact on yourself, but it could have a very significant impact on Cromwell and Vince. So
Wouldn't it make sense if you're going to be doing, you know, with grants, is to do them within the known financial year?
well, for the reasons we outlined before for events, it doesn't actually make sense. So event organisers, say an event's happening in October, they need to be starting to book and get things lined up and locked down well in advance of October.
Yeah, but your financial year is end of March, so would
No,
it be
it's July, end of June, 1st of July.
you would get a different loss.
council's 1 July financial year.
Well, that was a nice flexible.
Right, okay,
So the staff,
What's the half?
right, okay.
yeah, I should have said as well, staff recommendation on this one is to remain as it is, to leave it
Yeah.
as it currently sits, because it's,
Right.
we've tweaked with this a bunch of times.
Yeah,
The way it currently works is the best that we've been able
And
to.
the other thing we've done is, like we've now, this round, we said, look, grant applications close the 7th of July. So we make it as close to that 1 July figure as possible, this from community grants. So that, because people can apply, and we'll know by the whatever July if there's money or not in the budgets.
I'm just wondering if people who apply for these promotion grants know that your financial year is.
We try and tell them.
It's fine, yeah.
So like St Bathans, for instance, I gave them a call and said, hey, you want to get the grant application in this round for next year's January fee.
Okay, all right, so I'm getting a general sense of just leave it alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool.
So you also did July, you say.
Right, next slide. Okay, again, these are ideas, these are not necessarily staff recommendations. So who can access a grant? And this is both applying, we're talking about here, community and promotions grants. So defining who can access a grant, does it have to be a formally registered entity, or as it is currently done, should community boards continue to be able to fund projects or groups that can clearly show evidence of capability and resource, but don't have any formal structure? So at the moment, if someone comes to Rebecca or Ali and can present a case that shows clear evidence they have the capability and resource to deliver, then the staff recommendation will be to you that, yeah, you should accept this and progress it. The question up here is actually, should we be making event organisers, community groups actually be a charitable trust or an incorporated society or something of that form that is a really structured entity that has
So what's strong on that?
it's just a question that's come from different groups.
I personally, I think above 10,000, they need a bank account. And probably an entity. We've had an application this round for another community board for $11,000 for an informal group. And that one for me was really hard with that accountable for public purse. How am I going to pay this? Now they have organised themselves enough to have a bank account. So that made it, instead of saying like Jill, it was Jill, she's part of the group. I know it's for the group, but putting in Jill's account's a problem and it's $11,000. 1,500, I can say, hey Jill, you buy it and I'll pay back. So I think, yeah.
We have had examples too where, as a condition of the grant, they needed to formalise what their entity was before the grant would be released. They applied and went through the process and got awarded the grant, but that was subject to that for forming an entity.
It puts a barrier in us.
Yeah.
It enables due diligence.
It does. So it's,
And I think that's critical.
but it does put a
Well, it
barrier.
puts a barrier. I mean, surely between Rebecca and us, we can assess the
Legitimacy.
genuineness. Is that the word?
It's a small valley, you know, it's not much needed.
You go, I mean, so the other example, we'll say what it is, the Lower Manorburn Reserve Working Group. So they've done a heap of work on the Lower Manorburn Reserve. They're not a formal entity, have no interest in becoming a formal entity, but they want to continue to plant out that reserve. And so it's figuring out how to allow them to do that without having to become an incorporated society and having annual returns and secretaries and treasurers and rah-de-rah.
So is there another group that's associated with that band?
Not anymore. There used to be until last week.
But in here, we'd use Teviot Prospects for that.
You used to be,
We
but
go to Teviot Prospects and say, we want to do this. Can you support us with Teviot Prospects and Teviot Prospects?
That's
But if
right.
this with the application, they've got the bank account, they're the incorporated society.
A host entity.
yeah,
Yeah.
some funders
Hosting.
like OCT doesn't like umbrella groups.
Oh.
So you've got the example is Huddle, and Huddle's a collective that we're involved with along with Queenstown and BLT and the like. Now Volunteer South is the applier for funds, but then if Volunteer South want to also apply for funds for their own purposes, it's tricky for Otago Community Trust to fund both.
True.
That's not so much for us because we know that it's for different purposes.
Yeah.
And again, yours are 5 and 2, so they're not huge.
There's not significant risk with yours, right? But for example, at the moment, possibly based on evidence, and it would have to have some pretty strong evidence, but we could put $50,000 into the personal account of someone right now.
Oh.
Now, we would be unlikely to do that, of course, but there's no piece in there that says.
So if the barrier, as you say, the barrier is there because you act on sensibilities.
Correct, and the board's got to approve and things like that.
So
right?
is that enough of a gatekeeper?
That's the question.
Because the downside is you make it really difficult for a small group with a one-off idea, go, look, we want to do.
Yeah.
We want to paint that wall over there and we need to buy some paint.
Yeah.
So. Rebecca, well, the conversations we've had within at least the promotions group, and Rebecca, please speak to the community piece, is the staff recommendation on this is probably don't touch it, leave it as it is, because it does enable that, but through the board, the people on the board making the decision and the staff recommendation, we feel we've got a system that will ensure we can do this properly.
I do think we should put in a 10K bank limit rule, bank account rule.
Yeah.
Because 10K is a lot of money.
Okay.
You going to worry us at any time?
No, well,
That would solve it.
if you're applying for amounts above $10,000, you need to have, the entity must have a bank account.
I think that's sensible.
It's all about co-sign. It's got to be two people who sign money and or out more importantly.
So you're willing to put that limit at 10K?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think it's up to the board and again.
Well, we haven't been tested.
No?
No, we haven't tested it.
We haven't been tested under, but auditors, because I'm so anal with money, it's, you know, I cross all the T's and dot all the I's, but it's to make sure you got that audit trail.
Yeah.
Should it be 5?
No, 10.
Okay.
OCT, it's 1,000. So that's why it's nice to have flexibility.
Okay.
So I'm getting the sense, no need to change, but is there an interest in this 10K co-sign bank account kind of theory?
I think that's sensible.
Yeah.
Right, cool. Thank you. Right. Promotions grants again, so only promotions grants. And infrastructure purchases. So again, possibly not an issue for this board, but we have had requests in other areas where entities may want to buy essentially event infrastructure that they would therefore retain ownership of.
Our business group wants to do exactly that, buy some lights for Christmas Day, which will be used every year for Christmas Day.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So should there be restrictions put on whether or not groups can do that? And, you know, essentially, if there was a purchase, like say a sound system or lighting, should it actually be retained in ownership by the community board? Now, there's a whole lot of stuff we need to go through to figure out if that's even possible to do, and particularly including the logistics around what, you know, hiring in and out of systems and things like. Answer's team already do that with marquees and finish line entries and timing blocks and things. Ans will tell you it is an absolute headache and nightmare. Right? It's not the easiest process to manage or look at.
Not when you've got to store stuff in several locations and make sure that everything goes back to the right location.
It's in working order and.
Correct. And it doesn't, like this would put costs on the community board because you would have cost of storage. There would possibly be a staff cost if it was a staff member who would have to help, you know, manage this for you. But it's a question that's been brought up.
So assuming that we don't just look after the gear themselves, and it's their gear.
Well, that's currently what happens.
Yeah.
And you could be totally cool with that, but this is one of the questions that's been asked.
I think it's something like that, like if they want it publicly funded, but still retain, it would have to have a dollar value. Like no more than whatever.
Would you want to put that in a policy though, or would you make that decision as a board at the time?
Make that decision at the board at the table, depending on what it is.
Yeah.
You know, like Mark said, you know, we're looking for lighting.
And the,
Christmas do, we need to do that because it's too bloody expensive to close off the roads anymore.
But then if you said you want to buy a car and a trailer to pull it and put it up and all that, you'd have a different approach to it.
and the light boxes could be classified as infrastructure that you just funded to.
Yeah.
So some of this comes from where we get like the same items, like groups asking repeatedly for the same items. So if you suddenly were saying kind of like applicants were kind of going, we would like some money for a sound system, we would like some money for a sound system, we would like some money for a sound system. Obviously, there's a
Yeah.
community need for a sound system.
Yeah.
So that's where you kind of go, what do we need? And that's how we ended up through the regional events fund, kind of going, what were some of those common things that were getting requested for, or that would lift the quality of our events. And that's when we got some 3x3, a 6x3 and a 16x10 gazebo, because they were common things that people were having to hire or it was challenging to get and move around. So through that fund, we were able to purchase those for the collective good and manage it with its challenges.
So if we did something like that and we watched through, how about putting prospectus into the mark where it actually, instead of it belonging to separately, it belongs to the community through prospectus.
Yeah, so well, right now,
Right.
prospectors could apply to a promotions grant fund to purchase a sound system, lighting, whatever you wanted it to be, and they could retain it, but it's theirs.
Yeah.
They can do whatever they want with it after that. And that could be a better way to, rather than the community, because this, again, this is another one of these that's been raised. It's a question. It's something that we are taking around the community boards. This doesn't have staff support.
Well, if it's going to be, our ratepayer money, it's whatever is bought with that ratepayer money must be retained for the ratepayers.
Yeah, I mean,
Like
in our case, we have got an umbrella group.
Yeah.
Teviot Prospects and Teviot Prospects. We're probably going to apply for the lighting because of the reason that we didn't think that the business group had enough sufficient standing to say we want $2,000 for lighting. Yeah, but if you continue the conversation, Prospects would be quite happy to apply for the money and get the money and administer the ownership and ongoing management of those lights. So that solves it for our community, because we've got an umbrella group.
And that's essentially how it functions right now. Because whether or not you want to change that.
Oh, that's how it already works.
That's how it works right now. What we're asking is actually,
Did you have concerns?
did you have a concern that that could be the way it's okay. Well, I'm sensing you don't. No. Jill, no, Norm, no.
I think that's better than a non-formed group getting hold of the lights and then ending up in a box in someone's garage.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question. Any other thoughts? Anything else community board members want to raise that relates to community and or promotions grants?
The volume of the grant, what the amount.
Coming to you later in October.
So there'll be three. So we're going to have chairman's grant, community
Gonna be
grant,
part of
No, so
Chairman's
with chairman's
discretion,
grant
fees,
still
of
inside of
discretion.
either
Okay,
promotions and events or community.
right. At the moment, we've got 5 plus 2. And the plus 2 creates 40 cents a rate.
this round provides you with more evidence for that conversation in October.
Yeah.
In the past, we haven't been able to support you because you haven't spent your money.
Yeah.
And so you
You've been
couldn't.
accumulating.
Yep, they get you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't like it, but I
Yeah,
understand the logic.
But yes, that's the conversation we'll have with you. I think it's October, is it, Winnie?
Yeah.
Around
What's the
size of cost,
in October, what's the trigger for that?
Long-term.
long-term plan, budget.
Wayne, can people
Um,
hear me?
Oh, sorry, anything else from,
I have 2 questions though.
okay, I have one other statement, possibly more than a question.
One's
Just-
a statement, one's a question.
Oh, you go first.
Question, second round. So there is usually a second funding round when there are funds to do so. Council has spent all their money, so we're not having a second round of funding. You guys have spent all your money. And now we've got this weird reserve question hanging over our head. I think we have to come back to you about that. So I think what I'll do at the minute is just update the literature on the thing to say there's zero money.
For the promotions, right?
No, this is for both. So you've spent all your money today. So you've now got no money to allocate in March unless you use reserves. Being the second part of the financial year, it will be first year of the next financial year for promotions.
So go back to the discussion that we had
Yeah,
when we asked for a $10,000.
so I think that we can do a wording that says there are currently no funds to allocate, however, figuring out what council does when it gets to council. However, they will consider applications as part of the reserve for a good, you know, if you've got a good application, still applies sort of thing. Yeah. But it's gonna depend on what happens at council.
Clear. To reduce.
We haven't reduced.
Well,
We couldn't increase, we couldn't increase.
And that was part of my answer this morning, is that was never made clear to us.
And then it was suggested that we put it into the next year's plan, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that's what you should do.
And, but we had no idea, and we were not informed that actually
This debt thing's only just happened, so the vote council's only been informed of it 2 weeks ago. Yeah, so it's a new thing. We've all been like sideswiped.
Yep.
The second thing was there is a funding clinic in Roxburgh on the 7th of November. Please mark it in your calendars and let everyone know. We'll promote it. It'll be in the bulletin, but it is scheduled for the 7th of November, 10:30, right here.
Funding clinic. And it's for,
It'll be the Otago Community Trust, the Central Lakes Trust, the, I don't know that Aotearoa Gaming will come because it's not the pub in town.
Central Lakes.
Central Lakes Clubs we come, often DIA is here, which do lotteries funding. So it's a good opportunity for people to come and ask about events, all sorts of things, big money, little money.
maybe we should ask so that we can put our own money in the pot.
Your money's there, so I'm there talking on your behalf.
Okay.
Sorry, you had a question?
I've got, sorry, Graham.
I've tried to encourage people to come to that.
We have people come from all over the place come to it. From Alexandria and like Renfrew. They're like, why do you come to Roxburgh?
For a pie as
Just-
well.
So what is it that we are trying to achieve out of hosting it?
It's the funding.
So I can communicate the message.
Funding clinics are held right across the district.
Yeah.
To provide an opportunity for local communities to get in front of the funders. So there'll be so the grants manager of Otago Community Trust will be there.
Yeah.
One of the grants advisors from Central Lakes Trust will be there. I'll be there. There might be someone from the Department of Internal Affairs, but it's one-to-one advice, general overview of all our grants and all the different nuances, but it's one-on-one advice from those funders in one place at one time.
So I've tried to encourage the guys from the rest of them to come along, particularly one person. But he had already had those conversations.
That's fine. If he doesn't need more money, he
I was
doesn't.
wondering if there's anything different. We compare types of grants and all that sort of stuff.
You do hear us how we work together. You do hear, oh, we'll pay for that. We won't, so you start to get a feel for how that works when you're in the room. The other beauty thing that happens, and Alex and Cromwell particularly, is because we go around the room and say, can you just let us know what you're here to apply for? And so there's the cross stuff happens. So this person's talking about this thing and that person's going, oh, hey, well, we're doing this. We could work together and do magic.
So with our funds that are past funds, there's 15 left or something, is that right? Past reserve?
Oh, yeah.
22 and 18 and the reserves.
22 and 18.
No,
18 is, so
and
One-
22
one
one is $600.
confirmed.
Okay. So,
So it'll be 18 and
22-ish.
22 probably.
Okay, and the other awards are in credit or they?
No, that will go over the show.
They're all,
There's no consideration.
No,
right, and there's a council pot as well.
but it's
Only for,
only for community grants. So council has $150,000 to distribute annually. That doesn't have any reserve.
So where is this deficit at the moment? It's
Not just reserve, it's not grants,
it's also
it's all
like swimming
activity.
pools, like
all
anywhere
budget.
there's a reserve.
Oh, I see. So the reserves budget is
It's
for,
because we're transitioning, and it was, for me, when I came first, so I came from the Dunedin City Council, Mark, to the Central Otago District Council, and DCC operates in debt, so its whole operation is debt. And so it's, when it puts up a capital project, it puts up, so 10% servicing, blah, blah, blah. Here, we never had debt, and we're transitioning from not having debt to having debt, and I think that it's just working through that. As an entity, I think is the main, is what my observations are.
okay.
And it's just the transition from working one way when you've never worked in debt to one where actually now we're working in debt. What does that look like?
Right.
It's bloody dangerous for the
And-
community.
And reserves to get into a negative is because at some stage, there's been a good case put forward and said, can we overspend on this? And the answer's been, well,
Yeah.
yeah, because it's going to be a 10-year
That's
benefit and we'll let that go. But
Yeah.
that's not likely to happen again.
That's right.
But that,
Right, I have one other thought to share, not mine. It comes from the mayor, and it is, that there could be a chance going into the next financial year through the LPP, that there will not be any money made available for grants. What is the board's view?
why isn't it here? Why isn't it here?
Do you support grants? Are grants for service?
Yes, they're some of the lifeblood of little communities like this, and I think it's important that we have grants. And we no longer get our burns mowed, our rates have gone up, we've got to get something.
And particularly in the light
Quite
of the quantum of ours at the moment, even if they were double, if it was 10,000 and 4,000, I mean, that pales into absolute insignificance compared to some of the other budget items that the council has in terms of, tens if not hundreds of millions of dollars. So that I would see it as absolute penny pitching to the, to the detriment of the image of the community board and the council if we said we're going to save 15,000 here. And it's not only, the big ticket items that we talked about yesterday, it's like, and the other wards have got 40, 50, 60, 100,000.
I think the total is just over 300,000.
Collectively, when you put it together with community board, communities grants at council, community board, community grants and promotion grants, it's almost $500,000.
Yeah.
So it's collectively, it's a big chunk of cash, right?
Yeah.
Yes, your pots are small.
So our pots are small.
It's a provocative question that Tim wanted, and we are asking of all the community boards.
Collectively, it's a 1% rate. 1% of our rates is spending.
Just
Across the
putting the question out there,
Literally 1%.
because we are doing this workshop, and so it's a time to ask that question.
Why we didn't hang around?
He did ask it, but it's
He
not
asked
fair.
Yeah, if the council were to take away and grants were to go because of council debt, which still hurts me because nobody's actually seriously stood up for our Prime Minister yet and said, we do not need to spend this amount of money on water. Roxburgh and water has always been to an exceedingly high standard. It was one of the few places that met
So,
government standards, so we have to spend a shitload of money on something we actually don't need. But secondly, I would also advocate that our community board have its own checkbook and its own bank account.
so just to correct, it's not about council debt. It's about this is essentially an operating costs component. This is part of council and community board's annual operating expenses. There's no relation to debt whatsoever in terms of this part of the conversation. But it is, and obviously we all heard it, ratepayers saying, we don't want to be getting increased rates once again. And so this part of the conversation is when we look at things and ways to keep rates down,
So,
do community boards see that grants provide them value? And
so
do
our
they
current,
want to see them continue?
yeah, okay.
That's the question.
So useful.
So I say that our current rates for our current cost to ratepayers for the two grants that we currently have, the 5,000 and 2,000, whilst the 2,000 is funded through a direct Teviot Valley Ward Services rate, and the other one is funded through general rate, is it? The community grant.
Yes.
The general rate.
Yep.
The cost to this community is $1.30 per household. If we were to triple that, so it'd be 21,000, then the cost is going to be $4 a household. And I would suggest that that's an easy sell for us to go with 20,000 instead of 7,000. If we went down to zero,
We'll come back to you about where it goes next time around. But I think keep some of that math there, Mark, because it could be a good conversation to have, right? But do remember, grants aren't in isolation of everything else, because there will be other cost pressures that come on this community board and council as we go into the LTP budget process. Alex wants to do a summary. She does. Very quickly before she has to run and go pick up her kids from school, and then I'll give you the last slide. Alex.
Thank you. Can I be heard?
Okay,
Cool.
Oh, right, Alex, you had all that time.
I'm unmuted. It's your end.
Have we got sound?
yes.
Is it Wayne?
well, I've got the speaker.
Double check.
100.
By 100 Wayne and something. Yeah.
Yeah, 463.
What's the half million bucks?
Yeah.
It's a lot.
I can live in
But then you've got the goods to do.
But I'll try to.
Right there.
How's that, Wayne?
Yep, that'll do.
Okay, working well. A huge number of groups. We see applications from less than 10%. So the ones that need the support seem to be applying. It meets a community need. It has connection, interaction. It brings the community or children in who otherwise wouldn't be. And we like that it's a broad ability to fund. I've also popped back up and put lifeblood of the community. Not working as well. The discussion about the reserves, the potential complexity of the form, a possibility to tear it out and make smaller applications easier, and also if the board has to ask about stories, media and acknowledgement, that's possibly a work on. Support for the chairperson's fund, support for the promotions and events fund, and support for tightening self-sustaining. At first, we were looking at 3 years, then 5 years. So what I've written is there's a preference for the board to decide the length of the runway on a case-by-case basis against any caps, whether that's on the board or the community groups. Not necessary to have multi-year grants for promotions groups and leave the timing as is. Who can access, enabling due diligence is critical with public money, but we don't like barriers to the community. Okay with a $10,000 bank account rule, a $7,000 limit on bank accounts for individuals is sensible. Leave infrastructure as is. And then in other, I've put the size of the pot could be doubled to 80 cents, a preference to reach further into the community and make it easy, and a preference to keep a lot of local board discretion. And then on should we have grants, as emphatically as possible, a yes.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. I think that
Thanks, Alex.
caught everything.
Thanks, everyone. Good luck.
Thank you.
So that she said was cap
We
on
lost line.
$10,000.
Yeah, we've still got a lot on, still a bit to finish.
So,
I know, you can.
so you know, we talked about doing when you find for more than $10,000, you've got to have it. And then she mentioned the $7,000. Was that another
What did she say there?
cap?
I said
So
$10,000 for a nominated bank account, and around $7,000 there was a preference that 2 people access the bank account rather than giving it to an individual.
So, yeah, double sign.
Yeah.
Right. I think that might have been $10,000, Alex, was it? Rather than.
Yeah, I think we still want
I
the
think
10,
we are
an
in that.
ND and
Sorry.
double signature.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
Last slide, Wayno. So from here, we'll finish out two more community board workshops next week. Then we go to council with this same conversation and have the same conversation with them. 30th of October, we'll take a revised policy to council for their approval and adoption. And from there, essentially the new policy will be in play. So we'll give you an update on that. Grants round will run under the new policy. Budgets for the community boards will be confirmed, obviously, as part of the LTP process. In July 1, I can actually delete that part because I made it up. So yeah, essentially, by 30th of October, the new policy, whatever that is, will be in place, and we'll make sure you have an update on that. Thank you very much.
And Norman, you're speaking on the 25th of September.
That's what we decided we need to do that very shortly. I'm planning for it to happen.
Yeah.